President Trump had quite the working weekend over in Scotland. He scored a huge, and I mean huge, gigantic trade deal with the European Union, thus proving all the experts wrong again. And they're shedding tears over all of it. But you're not, because you're an American and you're going to benefit bigly by this. Who's most upset? The Europeans. We're going to show you exactly what they're saying about this deal. Also, Trump continues to get high ratings for his foreign policy wins in just these first 6 months. So much so that he's changed Bill Maher's mind about his position on foreign policy and about what Trump's been doing internationally. But Democrats, they've still got a great response to all that. Orange man bad. We'll show you all of it. And yes, we've got an update on the Russian collusion hoax, as it looks like multiple criminal referrals are moving their way to the Justice Department for the conspirators against Trump back in 2016. Kristen Welker, though, over on Meet the Press, NBC News, oh, she's big mad, and she tried to lie her way through. Her show will expose her as the fraud she is, coming up right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. We're hitting those midsummer dog days of August this week, and you're probably reassessing your finances. You're watching the market. You're trying to pay down debt and reset here after all the inflation from Joe Biden. You got to focus on your personal finances, and that's why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold right now from Birch Gold. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. How's the rest of your investments doing? 40% increase in 12 months? Exactly. Some central banks bolster demand for gold by buying it in record quantities. And yes, there's still some tensions overseas. There's still a little bit of instability. You may be able to find peace of mind with gold right now. Birch Gold makes it super easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Just text my name, Larry, to 989898. Birch Gold's going to send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. They've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They've got tens of thousands of happy customers. It's time for you to take control of your savings today. Text the word Larry to 989898. Do that today. For months now, the experts have been telling us that tariffs are going to destroy the world economy, that Trump inherited a booming economy, and he single-handedly destroyed it. Self-immolation, self-destruction. What is he doing? What is he thinking? Tariffs are a nightmare. And, well, yesterday he emerged from his meetings in Europe, in Scotland in particular, with the European Union, with a trade deal that nobody thought he could achieve. A trade deal that proved all of those experts wrong. And they're admitting it, actually, today. We'll show you that and savor the sweet smell of success coming up in a minute. First, though, you woke up to this kind of news from the weenie brains over at Axios. Even they have to admit how glorious this deal was. In the Trump-dominated global economy, the U.S. gets plenty, but gives nothing in return. This is, by the way, an American publication. And can you sense that they're actually sad about this? This hurt them physically to have to write it. Like, they think it's a problem that the U.S. is getting so much and others get nothing in return. But of course, the reality is we're playing makeup after decades of foreign countries taking advantage of us and screwing us right where it hurts the most. That's what these deals are all about. And even the head of the European Union admitted that yesterday when she announced this deal. That, again, coming up in a moment. First, though, fast forward to this morning, where the hits kept coming for the Europeans, and most particularly in this image for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Here he is welcoming the president in Scotland on the island of Great Britain. But, oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. He's not welcoming the president. The president's welcoming him because Trump has his own glorious award-winning golf club in Scotland. He's even got the bagpipes playing. It's power move after power move here as Trump, as the president of the United States, flies to Scotland and then welcomes all of these European leaders to his home turf. And of course, imagery means everything in world politics. And you can't tell me that this doesn't set the tone. In fact, look at how they're positioned on the stairs here doing an impromptu press conference. I don't know if Prime Minister Keir Starmer is that much smaller than Trump. Maybe Trump stood on a step higher than him. But he looks like a very small man here. And watch the body language as Trump admonishes the Prime Minister about free speech in the United Kingdom.
Important to free speech today.
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud of that.
Did you see that move? Oh, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're talking about any place in particular. And he just
what's important to free speech today?
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here. So.
Yeah, but guess who's had it longer, pal? Guess who's had it longer? Sure, you had the Magna Carta, but you didn't actually enforce it right when you've got a totalitarian dictator monarch like King George III. But yeah, good for you with your little free speech. Don't you? Yeah, Trump should have patted him on the top of the head like Benny Hill and the little bald guy. Yeah, sure, you got free speech. Look at you with your little free speech. Of course, if I stood in front of an abortion mill in England and prayed the rosary silently in my head, I'd be arrested. Sure, you've got free speech. Sure. And then this moment about the mayor of London, who, by all accounts, appears to be an extremist Islamist who hates Western civilization and certainly hates the president of the United States and the United States in particular, if a conservative or a Republican happens to be in the White House. Here's what Trump had to say about the mayor of London, and then watch Keir Starmer, who's his ideological and political pal there in London.
You have that one, Larry?
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I'm watching it, but I'm not sharing it with you. Here you go.
Will you visit London during the state visit?
I will. I'm not a fan of your mayor.
Why not?
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But the nasty person, I think he's done. I think
he's a friend of mine, right?
No, I think he's done a terrible job. But I would certainly visit London.
You know what he should have done there? Let me be Trump for a quick second, because Trump always plays this great, right? But it would have been so beautiful if on his feet he would have done this.
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But the nasty person, I think he's done. I think he's
a friend of mine, right?
Well, your friend is a terrible mayor, and he's doing a terrible job. He should have actually personalized it. Oh, he's your friend? Well, your friend sucks. That would have been hilarious.
No, I think he's done a terrible job.
I mean, he basically did do that, right? All right, so that's what happened this morning, and we'll see what comes of their conversations there. But Trump is absolutely standing astride world politics right now and winning at every turn on behalf of the American people and on behalf of our industries and on behalf of our economy. Don't believe me? Well, you don't have to believe me. Even ABC News had to admit it.
A major victory for President Trump that averts a painful trade war between the United States and the European Union. The two trading partners exchange $2 trillion in goods every year. CBS's Weijia Jiang is in Edinburgh, Scotland, traveling with the president. Weijia.
Good evening, Jerika. Heading into trade talks, President Trump set expectations for getting a deal done with the European Union, putting the chances at 50-50. And then after a meeting that lasted just over 1 hour, Trump announced they had reached an agreement.
We have good news. We've reached a deal.
President Trump announced the news from his luxury golf resort in Turnberry, where he hosted the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
I think this deal will bring us very close together, actually. It's a partnership in a sense.
It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring
predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic.
The two leaders said the tariff rate for imports from the EU's 27 member countries would be 15%, down from 30% that was set to kick in on Friday. The EU has agreed to purchase U.S. military equipment, $750 billion of U.S. energy, and invest an additional $600 billion in other sectors. And there's good news for U.S. companies that sell to EU nations.
They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor.
It's a huge factor. And once again, just to revisit where we are here, Trump announces the tariffs on what he called Liberation Day, April 2nd, right? And of course, everybody's head explodes. Oh, God, you can't do that. It's going to ruin the economy. And it was 30% tariffs. The latest deadline to negotiate these had been pushed back to the end of this week, August 1st. And at the last minute, this is the deal came up with. It reduces all of those tariffs down to 15%. They're still there. But understand, Europe had tariffs before on us. We had nothing on them. So now we get the income from the tariffs into our treasury. Those are the tariff income dollars that actually put us in surplus for the first time in a decade in the month of June. Remember that. And it also opens up their markets for our products, which they had shut down before. Real easy to buy a Beamer or a Mercedes or a VW here in America, but you try buying a Ford over there in Europe. You could do it, but it's super expensive, more expensive than here. Why? Because they jacked up huge tariffs. They also have a bunch of environmental standards over there that are stupid and they don't make any sense. And all of this has been offset now by Trump's negotiating power. And as positive as that ABC News report, or was that CBS News? I apologize. That's CBS News. As positive as that was, it didn't even tell the whole tale. We'll get into the details of this coming up in a minute. In fact, and specifically about how the Europeans are lamenting it. But here is probably the most important exchange of this entire weekend. When the Chancellor of the European Union is asked by one of the reporters here after all these details come out, and it's obvious that this is incredibly in favor of American industry and the American people. I want to keep reiterating because I keep saying Trump wins, Trump wins. No, you won. You won. Your bank account won. Your savings won. Okay? The company you work for won. And when the Chancellor of the EU was asked one very simple question, okay, I get it. What concessions did the Americans give here? What did you get from the Americans was the question. Watch this. Watch the answer.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the EU Commission President. What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the US side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic. And that was important for us.
So good job by George. He has an account on X. It's George on X. Be Hizzy Tweets is his handle. But he added some graphics there to sort of reiterate the point with the caption. So I want to give him credit. Did you catch that? What concessions did the U.S. make? Did you watch it? It was 45 seconds long. Did you see what concessions we made? We didn't make any concessions. And she conceded the point that they had to rebalance the relationship because it was so out of balance up until now. They had such a trade surplus with us because of the restrictions that they had been putting on our companies and because we were playing by the rules with free trade and they never were. All of the conservative critics of tariffs, they didn't quite ever concede the point that was just conceded to by the EU, which is, yes, we'd love free trade. In a perfect world, free trade would be great. But we're not experiencing free trade. It's one-sided. We kept things free. They kept us out. And now we've rebalanced it. And I cannot tell you how critically important that concession is to validate actually Trump's position on all of this that he's been saying for 30 years before he even got into politics and ran for office. That right there tells the tale. Later, she elaborated on her relationship with the president and how these negotiations went.
I want to thank President Trump personally for his personal commitment and leadership to achieve this breakthrough. He's a tough negotiator, but he is also a deal maker. I want to thank President Trump.
Which is probably the highest praise. Forget about your Nobel Prize. Donald, that's all Donald Trump wants to hear. I'm a tough negotiator and a deal maker. And the deal's been made. Now let's go do the details here. And I want to show you, this is how the American side of it is conveying and communicating what this deal is. In a second, I'm going to show you what European commentators, how they're describing the exact same deals. It's hilarious. They are so angry about this. They're so angry because they know that after 20 years of screwing us, now finally, I mean, they think they're getting screwed. The way we look at it, we're now actually making things a little bit more balanced. But here's what happens. As you saw, the EU buys $750 billion in energy products. Why is that great? Well, first of all, it helps our industries here in America because our energy companies are going to profit off of this. That actually makes energy cheaper here in America, number one. Number two, that means that if the Europeans are buying energy, gas, oil from us, they're not buying it from Russia. If you care about the war in Ukraine, if you care about Putin and you think he's the next Hitler, like all of our superiors and moral intellectual betters kept lecturing us from Europe, that, you know, what is America going to do about Russia? What's America? Okay, well, if you really care about Putin, this is great news for you. Because if they're buying energy from us, they're not buying it from Putin. That means they're not enriching his war machine. Understand something for a second here, okay? Let me just pause here. Set aside the trade deal for a second. Up until now, Europe, countries in Europe, were buying a huge amount of their gas and oil from Vladimir Putin and Russia, while at the same time lecturing us about how we need to pay for Ukraine's defense. They were spending, hear my words, you can fact check it, use whatever AI you want or whatever search engine. The European Union as a whole were spending more money on gas and oil with Russia, giving Russia their money for gas and oil, than they were supporting the Ukrainian war effort. While all at the same time they were screaming that Putin was Hitler and that we were in some way neglectful because we weren't spending money as much as they wanted us to on the Ukrainian war effort. Meanwhile, they were funding the Russian war effort. They're hypocrites. And now because of this deal, they'll be sending that money to us. That also hurts China too, by the way. If you care about Russia, you care about China, you love this deal. All right, $750 billion there, $600 billion in new investments. Real fast, top of my head, that's $1.25 trillion of either energy purchases or investment, plus more U.S. military equipment purchased from here. Tariffs raised to 15% on most EU goods. European pharmaceutical, that means they're going to have to pay a tariff coming in here. They haven't up until now. European pharmaceuticals not touched on this as a whole. They might look at that later. You could say maybe that's something we gave up on, but that's where it is right now. So we haven't moved from where we are right now on pharmaceuticals. We're just not adding the tariffs to it. Steel and aluminum tariffs stay at 50%. Trump agrees not to raise tariffs on the EU to 30%, zero tariffs on all goods going to the EU. 50% coming in, zero tariffs going out. It's about time we rebalance this. And again, this is Trump using tariffs as a weapon, as a threat, as a tool. So that's how we look at the deal. Want to see how European advisors are looking at it? Take a look. Same details, but look at the commentary. Single 15% rate on cars, pharmaceutical, semiconductors sold as clarity, but locks EU exports into permanent disadvantage. This is Europeans' mindset on it. Replace Russian gas with U.S. energy, price your fuel to kill EU energy sovereignty. U.S. chips will power our AI gigafactories. Europe abandons sovereign tech for dependency on the U.S. Zero U.S. tariffs on semiconductors crush EU producers. You see how negative they are about this deal over there? It's fantastic. Hidden betrayals. They believe the EU betrayed their member countries. Car industry hammered 15% tariff buries EU automakers in U.S. market. Steel, aluminum, fair competition is U.S. quota strangling EU industry. That's not a fair characterization because the tariffs on steel and aluminum are the same. Zero tariffs exceptions benefit U.S. exporters, aircraft, chemicals, not EU. So this is a European economist who's complaining about these things because they feel like they're getting screwed. If the Europeans think they're getting screwed, that's a great deal for us, you guys. Who else? Oh, look at this guy. Clouseau Investments. Again, it's a European who's covering this stuff. He says he keeps getting away with it. He is Trump. 15 to 20% tariffs with zero retaliation, forced purchases of U.S. energy and military equipment, and commitments to invest hundreds of billions in the U.S. with no action on our part. LMAO, indeed. Bill Mitchell says, so do I have this right? The EU is going to pay us a 50% tariff on exports to the U.S. while charging us 0% tariffs on U.S. goods sold there and promising to buy hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. energy and arms. Did Trump have pictures of them naked? That's the praise that's being showered on Trump for this. Now, what about the other side of the equation? If our side's praising, what are they saying? Well, how about Financial Times? Financial Times, European perspective, there is no hiding the fact the EU was rolled over by the Trump juggernaut, said one ambassador. Trump worked out exactly where our pain threshold is. How about the Telegraph in the UK? What did the EU get in return for all that? Absolutely nothing. It's meant to be a negotiating superpower, but it does not look that way right now. This is criticism of the European Union from within the continent, or in this case, in the United Kingdom. That's the perspective from over there about what the EU just did. And don't forget, this comes just weeks after Trump got NATO to not only agree to fulfill their decades-long requirement that 2.5% of their gross domestic product go to self-defense, but he actually upped it to 5% when he was being criticized for holding the line at 2%. So it's nothing but winning right now. You know how you know? Because they're screaming about it. Oliver Blanchard from MIT. He's a senior fellow. What I worried about has happened. A completely unequal deal between the U.S. and the EU. Have no doubt, asymmetric 15% tariffs are an EU defeat. When the law of the jungle prevails, the weak have little choice than to accept their fate. But Europe could potentially have been strong, either alone or in a coalition with others. It would have had to be ready for stormy waters, but it would have gotten a better deal in the end and sent a strong message to the world. An opportunity less, not a strong message to the world. What he's saying, he wanted a strong message to America. He wanted the EU to hold the line and spank us, and the EU knew better. Listen, this isn't a gloat or to celebrate or in some way do a victory lap at our trading partners and our friends in Europe's coming up on the short end of this deal. No, this is about being self-satisfied with the fact that we have actually started to get the trade balance back to an equal relationship, which is all we ask for. It's all we've ever asked for. We treat you fairly, you treat us fairly, and you saw the president of the EU conceding that it hasn't been fair and equal up until this point. But the real victory here, the real victory is over the experts that are lamenting this, the experts that are crying about it. Up until this weekend, they were sure that the European Union was just going to sideline the United States and go directly to China and make a big deal with them and leave us out in the cold. And that would shift the global dominance to China, and that was going to benefit them and benefit the Europeans and make Trump look like a fool on the international stage. But it didn't happen. Actually, quite the opposite happened. China is now the odd man out. In fact, China is engaging in negotiations in Stockholm with our Secretary of Treasury today as we speak because they are reeling from this deal. They made the agreement with us, and Trump knew they were going to make the agreement with us. And a lot of experts did know that as well, but they were silenced. They did not get a voice on mainstream media. They didn't get a voice in those same newspapers that I just quoted. They were ridiculed. They were laughed at. They were set aside. The experts they talked to said, oh, Trump is screwing up the world economy, and he's going to embolden China, and Europe's going to drop us, and this is going to shift the balance of power in the world. But what they were missing out on was the key fact, and we told you about this a couple of months ago, that if you're engaging in commerce, the most important person in the exchange is the customer, right? The customer is always right, and you've got to accommodate the customer, because if the person buying the product or the service is not included in the equation or feels like they're getting gypped and they want to go somewhere else, then you, as the person selling that product and service, you're screwed. You can't be in business without the customer, without the person buying things. They're the ones who are paying the bills and keeping the lights on. And right now on this planet, we are the single number one customer. We're the ones buying things. We're the ones who are have to be accommodated. And Trump knew that. Trump knew that. You want access to our market? Then you need to play by our rules instead of us playing by your rules. That's all he said. It was that simple. And here we are. The fact that we are the number one customer and we get the benefit of wielding that power in negotiating these deals, that's huge. Add to the fact that we also happen to be the policeman and the security force. It's a no-brainer who is going to come out on top here. And the next step is China. And that's going to be something to witness. One more word here. All those networks and all those newspapers and all of those media platforms that had those experts who look like fools now. Just a thought. I could be wrong here. You got much bigger sets than me with a lot more lights and all those fancy graphics. But maybe, just maybe, you might want to find better experts. Hey, guys, as you know, I like to slam the media on almost every segment we've got, and there's more to come. But if you like my media analysis, the way I can sort of break down and show you what they do and the way they lie to you and how they're failing at every turn, check out my book. I wrote a book about the 2024 election, but specifically about the media's coverage of it. It's called Shameless Liars. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. And I think that you'll like it. It shows you all the lies that they told in the election, but also, more importantly, how we have a new media and we have a new way forward, and how all their lies and all their deceit didn't matter. Trump won. He defeated Biden. He defeated Kamala, but he defeated the media too. I think you'll like the book. Check it out. And if you've got the book already, leave me a review at Amazon. It makes a big difference. Thanks a bunch. So on the heels of the huge trade deal announcement this weekend, and after the work with Iran and Israel and the bombing of the nuclear power plants and continued engagement in Western Europe, you might wonder, how's Trump doing now on the international stage? How's his ratings going for foreign policy and for national security? Well, if Bill Maher is any indication, well, Donald Trump is changing a lot of minds out there. Bill Maher, of all people, admitted this weekend that he was completely wrong, and he has done a 180 on almost all of Trump's foreign policy positions. I want to show you that in just a second. But how about the polls? Our buddy Harry Enton over there at CNN has a lot of polls about Trump and the Republicans on foreign policy, and it's not good news for the Democrats.
This one was a surprising one to me, given everything that's going on in Russia, what happened in Iran, what happened in Gaza. But the bottom line is Democrats in the American voters' minds cannot hack it. What are we talking about? Party trust more in foreign policy. Well, the GOP holds an average 6-point lead in the month of July. Look at this. Fox News came out last week, plus 3 points for Republicans on foreign policy over the Democrats. You think that number is not high enough for you? How about the Wall Street Journal? GOP plus 8 points when they match congressional Democrats up against congressional Republicans. The bottom line is this. Despite everything that's going on in the world right now, Republicans are more trusted on Democrats when it comes to foreign policy and the world at large. Trust more in foreign policy. You go back to 2024, Trump had a 6-point advantage over Kamala Harris. Again, look at the average right now. It hasn't moved despite everything that's going on in the world. You see Republicans plus 6 points here. And this goes back to a larger issue that we have discussed over and over again here in the mornings. Despite any misgivings that the American public might have about Donald Trump, when you match up Republicans against Democrats, Donald Trump against Democrats, still at this particular point, they are doing significantly better than you might expect. And when it comes to the issue of foreign policy, again, what you see is in the American voters' minds, Democrats simply put can't hack it. More voters trust Republicans on foreign policy, very much like they did back during the 2024 campaign.
What about the strikes on Iran? Because while they were being contemplated, they were not universally popular.
No, they were not universally popular. And in the immediate aftermath, they were not universally popular. Look at this. Net approval rating, U.S. airstrikes on Iran. In late June, the net approval rating, look at that, -8 points underwater. But as the American people learned more and more about it, look at this. A 10-point rise. Now it's in the positive. The American people like the move that Donald Trump put on Iran, the U.S. airstrikes in Iran, a positive +2 net approval rating. So again, the bottom line is this. As the American people learn more about these airstrikes, as the American people compare Donald Trump and the Republicans against the Democrats, they see them far more favorably than you might expect.
Interesting and notable that the president is overseas today. Foreign policy may be an area that is stronger for him.
This
wow.
one.
Who would have ever said that, by the way, back when we first saw Donald Trump coming down that golden escalator at Trump Tower, that 10 years later, as a president serving in his second term, interrupted by a disaster there in the middle of the two terms, that Trump would be strongest on foreign policy. A guy who, didn't have the resume that we're all told you're supposed to have, who was running against Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, who we were told had all the foreign policy bona fides that you're supposed to have, that the experts tell us. That's a remarkable statement in and of itself, and the numbers bear it out. But two things that I want to point out to you that are really important here in that package. The first is this. Understand, in 2024, it was Harris versus Trump, so it's about Trump, right, and his foreign policy. But look at now. Look at now where the number is the exact same here. Who do you trust more on foreign policy? But the difference is it's not about Trump. It's about the party. Everyone said that Trump was just in it for himself and he's a narcissist. And even if he wins, he's going to destroy the Republican Party. But look, he's actually helping the party, the party's persona, the party's image, the party's reputation. The party is trusted on foreign policy over Democrats, because he's the leader of that party. And of course, well, guys, look at the next couple of people in line and what their foreign policy might be. We're looking at J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Boom, boom. They're right in line. They're part of the success, in fact. And Trump is doing a good job of spreading the wealth, too. Who would have thought that Donald Trump would actually build the party reputation over the Democrats rather than just his own numbers in his own ratings? But the other thing that I wanted to point out here is this, where they talk about the Iran nuclear strike and how in retrospect now, a month later, it's gained in popularity. Look at, to me, the most important part here is in late June, how it was at -8. Think for a second here. This is immediately after the strike, right? Immediately after the bombs were dropped, immediately after those missiles were launched from the submarine to destroy the nuclear capabilities for Iran. Why was the response -8? Why was he underwater on that foreign policy decision? By all measures, immediately we knew that it was an incredible mission and it was executed flawlessly and it was a success. So why were people against it? Well, there were a couple of people who were afraid that this was going to trigger World War III. But really, you know what happened? You remember, don't you? Remember? The media immediately started lying about the strikes. Remember how CNN got a anonymous tip from somebody at the Pentagon, from someone in the intelligence community, that said that the strike was a failure and that they hadn't really damaged Iran's nuclear capabilities and that it was a big disaster? Remember that that's what the media ran with, even though that it wasn't corroborated by anyone. And the people of the Trump administration and the Pentagon, they denied that. But they ran with it anyway, and there were blaring headlines everywhere. And then suddenly the New York Times and the Washington Post, yes, we can confirm that the intelligence community has decided that this was a disaster and that they didn't actually harm Iran. And it took several days for the truth to come out. It took several days for Iran to actually say, oh, no, we're screwed. We're screwed. In fact, we're going to have a ceasefire with Israel right now because we're so screwed. But the immediate reporting from the media was a lie. And they knew it, and they never corroborated it. They didn't care. They got an illegal anonymous leak, and they went with it because they didn't care what was true, and they didn't care that it might hurt the cause of peace. They didn't care that it would undermine our military and piss off the people who had actually just executed a perfect mission. They didn't care about any of that. They cared about one thing. Ooh, this is damaging to Trump. Go with it. And they did. That's why it was -8. That's why it was -8 in approval. The media is constantly trying to tip their hands on the scale. All right, which brings us to Bill Maher. Bill Maher, who has been a vitriolic critic of Donald Trump, but of late, whether for ratings purposes or maybe he's actually starting to think a second time about the positions that he's held, he's become open to the idea that first, Democrats are wrong about a lot of things, and they've strategically gone against Trump in the worst possible way. I mean, every decisions they've made have been wrong, and Bill Maher has pointed that out. But also specifically on foreign policy, two key issues. He said on his podcast this weekend that he was wrong, and he's done a 180. Take a look.
I loved it. This year, as it relates to Epstein,
that was a home run for me and for him. And I'm a guy who was always saying we should, at least when they had the deal, we should try to see if the Obama plan, that the peace deal that Obama made, can work. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but once had a long conversation with Netanyahu, who was wanting to talk me into, and may I say right now, all these years later, one, maybe I was wrong. I thought it was worth a try to bring
the JCPOA.
Yes.
All right. So here he's talking about the Obama's Iran nuclear deal that ended up sending pallets of cash to Iranians and allowed Iran to continue to enrich uranium. It was it was a disaster, it was horrible, but he wanted to give it a try. Hey, let's give it a try with these guys. No, sometimes with totalitarian liars that you can't trust because they're terrorists who have been screaming death to the great Satan, us here in America, for the last 50 years since their actual first day as the Islamic Republic of Iran, when they took our people hostages and tried to destroy us and our allies. Maybe you don't trust them, and maybe the only way to deal with them, sadly, is to bomb them, to stop them from doing bad things. And there's Bill Maher saying, yeah, looks like I was wrong. And then on tariffs, Bill Maher, same thing.
I remember I, along with probably most people, were saying at the beginning, oh, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me. But that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time, and they didn't. So, how do we deal with that fact? Because that's the fact.
I got to give him credit. I really do, because it takes a lot to show some humility and to concede that you were wrong about something. And you don't see it much. You don't see it much with podcasters. You don't see it much with comedians. And he's both. And you certainly don't see it with people in Hollywood or the left, for that matter. Very rarely do you see that. And it's funny. I have a lot of people in my life who I used to work with, or their family members, I'm sure you do too, who don't agree with you politically, who think that Trump is the great Satan, that he is evil personified, that he's this, he's that, and that. And it's funny, this Russian collusion thing, now that we're learning more and more and more and more about it, it's really instructive. I've been able to utilize this and a lot of other things like the tariffs, like the Iran bombing, like all these other things. And I've been able to come back to some of my friends. I just saw some of them over the weekend, in fact. And I said to them, listen, I understand. I mean, I don't understand, but I get your position. I hear you. You've made it loud and clear. Do you ever stop just for a minute? Take a big, deep breath and think to yourself, what if I'm wrong? See, that's what humility is. Humility is stopping and looking at yourself and thinking, you're so confident about these things, but what if you're wrong? Have you ever been so right about something until you suddenly realized, oh my God, I was completely wrong about that? What if they're wrong? What if Trump isn't what they keep saying he is? And here's Bill Maher reaching that point without any coaxing. And that should be applauded. All right, even Jake Tapper, well, I shouldn't say even Jake Tapper because he doesn't have that humility at all. He's a narcissist. He's arrogant. We love beating up on Jake Tapper. But even on his show this weekend, he had to ask a Democrat representative from Pennsylvania, why do you Democrats suck so much right now? Why are the polls consistently showing that you guys are in the toilet? In fact, the latest polls show Democrats with their lowest national rating in history. Understand that that means there are a lot of Democrats now who are angry at the Democrat Party because they're not fighting Trump enough. Okay, so it's not like they're in negative territory because everybody loves Trump. No, a lot of the negativity toward the Democrats is Democrats who are more radical than their current leadership because they want them to impeach Trump or burn the whole damn thing down or whatever. But still, the numbers are there and they're screwed. And Tapper confronted this congresswoman with it. And watch the hemming and hawing. Watch the rationalization. Unlike Bill Maher, who said, yeah, I was wrong. No. Now, watch how she pivots. And she's just completely clueless. The only answer she's got is, but Trump.
It feels like every few weeks, a new polling organization comes out with a poll saying Democrats are at the lowest level they've ever been. And the latest was Wall Street Journal. Democratic approval ratings hit a record roll. 63 of voters having an unfavorable view of your party. What does your party need to do to climb out of that?
I have to speak to two issues that just came up here. What I regret around the Epstein files is nobody talks about the victims. We need truth, transparency, and justice. Every time we talk about this, these now adult women, they were children. Let's remember this.
Yeah.
Many of them were children who were trafficked.
That's the whole
who were
reason.
raped,
There
who
needs
were
to be
assaulted.
justice for these women.
Justice for the women.
Yeah.
They are just re-victimized every single time.
Okay, real fast. I'm sorry. I can't let this slide, especially with Tapper saying, yes, that's why we need the Epstein files out for justice. Oh, go yourself, please. Yes, you're right. This is about little girls. I've been saying that for a while now. That's not what these people care about as they beat the drum about the Epstein files. You know it. They know it. We all know it. They haven't said a damn thing about this because they were afraid it was going to implicate their pals. Now they think that Trump is vulnerable, which he's not. But it's the only way they can deflect. They can. In fact, she just did it. You just saw her do it. She's asked about why Democrats are underwater and in the toilet in the polls. And she said, yeah, let's talk about Epstein for a minute. It's just a distraction. They're trying to use that. And so for you to now preen, especially Jake Tapper, yes, the only reason I'm now talking about getting the Epstein files out there is because of the girls and the victims. Bullshit. And everybody knows it, and it's disgustingly transparent. Okay, go ahead.
Release the files. It isn't just Maxwell and Epstein who knows what happened here when you traffic hundreds of girls and women. On the polling, I haven't seen polling that shows the president at 90% of anything.
Well, with Republicans, among Republicans.
Some small slice of Republicans, even his base is getting very upset with him over Epstein and the conspiracies and the failure to be transparent. What do I make of that Democratic, the poll? Yes, we're in the doghouse yet again. What I see and what I hear from my constituents, whether I'm answering the phone in my office or I'm out at the supermarket, everybody is anxious, upset, worried. They're worried about Gaza. They're worried about war crimes in Ukraine. They are worried about tariffs. They can't plan because businesses can't plan. They're also now worried about things they weren't worried about. Medicaid, Tens of thousands of my constituents are at risk of losing Medicaid support, whether it's for substance abuse or for their disabled child. So they're worrying about things they didn't have to worry about before, and they see a president not solving the big issues that are, some of them, very man-made, like Gaza.
All right, we're going to break that lie down for you here because that was just a lie, a complete and total lie. We're going to break it down and also ridicule this woman. First, I do like the Chiron. Democrats get lowest approval rating in 35 years. So what's her solution? Why is that happening?
Failure to be transparent. What do I make of that Democratic, the poll? Yes, we're in the doghouse yet again. What I see and what I hear from my constituents, whether I'm answering the phone in my office or I'm out at the supermarket, everybody is anxious, upset, worried. They're worried about Gaza.
They're worried about Gaza, really. So that's the first thing that she comes out with, as if, by the way, that's Trump's fault, anything that's going on in Israel and Gaza. All right. Also, I love that they're worried. They're worried about Gaza. Honey, you should go to a different grocery store. Okay. Something tells me that as she's going to the typical grocery store in her district, you know, blue collar area where people work at a factory. She's in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Something tells me that people don't stop her and say, you know, why aren't you doing something more about Israel and Gaza? And that they lead with Gaza, that's their problem. All right. But that's fine. What else?
Worried about war crimes in Ukraine.
War crimes in Ukraine. That's the important thing. Right. And by the way, I love that she's like laying out, you know what people are really worried about? And she lays out all of these foreign policy things. And she doesn't even know that within 12 hours of this appearance, Trump's going to come back with a successful trade deal with the EU. And the latest polls come out showing that Trump is sky high with Republicans on being trusted by the American people with foreign policy, as we showed you in the prior segment.
They are worried about tariffs. They can't plan because businesses can't plan. They're also now worried about things they weren't worried about. Medicaid.
Real fast. So first she goes on all the foreign policy things and tick, every single one of those things, as you just saw, Republicans are way more trusted than Democrats are on all of those very issues that she claims people are worried about. So if she's getting stopped by her voters in her district saying, I'm worried about tariffs, I'm worried about Iran, I'm worried about this, the fact is, if they are, which I don't think is true, but if they are worried about that, their solution is Republicans. It's not solving their lowest approval rating in 35 years, as we just showed you. But now comes the biggest lie of all. And be prepared, because next year in the midterms, they're going to repeat this lie over and over.
Thousands of my constituents are at risk of losing Medicaid support.
All right, if thousands of her constituents are at risk of losing Medicaid, it's because they're either illegal immigrants and they shouldn't be getting Medicaid, or they're able-bodied young men who haven't even attempted to go find a job or even volunteered for 20 hours at their local church or food bank, because that's all they're required to do in the new Medicaid deal. That's it. So if she's got those people, instead of reinforcing the lie and actually enabling them to get angry and upset, instead, if she were a responsible congresswoman, she would say, oh, you're worried about losing Medicaid? That's great. I can help you with that. Are you in the country illegally? You're not? Okay, then you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're not losing Medicaid. But she won't do that because politics is more important.
Whether it's for substance abuse or for their disabled child.
No disabled child is losing a penny of Medicaid. Just hear me. It is such a damnable, despicable lie. But understand how clever she just did it. My constituents are worried about this, that their disabled child might. Okay, well, alleviate the worry and tell them the truth, Congresswoman. But no, she wants to twist the knife on those worries. She wants to twist the knife on that anxiety and perpetuate this myth. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Okay, you know how bad it is for Democrats right now? You know how bad it is? This guy crawled out of the crypt. Chris Matthews, who hasn't had a show on MSNBC in years since they canceled him, even he sees how Trump continues to win across the board.
To be honest with you, the country is moving towards Trump. I mean, these polls that come out and show him not doing well, I don't buy that. I think his strength is still greater than the Democratic strength. He is a stronger public figure than the Democratic people. I mean, Obama still has tremendous charisma, but Trump has strength. And I think that's what all voters look for. But they want a president who is a strong figure. And he's got it. And he can, it's just there. And half the country buys it.
And he keeps winning. Yeah, Obama's got charisma, and Chris suddenly feels that thrill up his leg again. But yeah, even Chris Matthews has it. I love Charlie Rose trying to jump in there. Talk about crawling out from the crypt. How old is Charlie at this point? And Charlie says, "Oh, but wait." And Chris is like, "No, it's the truth. It is the truth." And they still don't have an answer. They still don't have a solution. And they're flailing around. And as you saw from the Tapper segment there, the only thing they've got is lies. And you know better. See, you didn't see that segment on CNN because you don't watch CNN. I mean, the only lies that continue to get perpetuated are within the echo chamber of the left-wing legacy media complex. Over here, where we've got free speech and we can go direct to you with the truth and with the facts, and then you can fact check us and you can participate and disagree and tell me so in the chat or in the comments after the fact. Try doing that with Jake Tapper while you're watching CNN. Yeah, over here, we're held to a higher standard, and the truth will always bear out, and that's why Republicans continue to win. Kind of nice how that works, isn't it? Hey, guys, love for you to become a member of Town Hall VIP. All you need to do is go to townhallvip.com, use my name when you check out, Larry, and you'll get 50% off. You'll get access to all of our content on all of our sites, Town Hall, Red State, Twitchy, Hot Air, PJ Media, without any ads. Plus, you get exclusive content just for VIP members, and you support our journalism. And it gets you lined up for our big Town Hall VIP cruise that isn't quite planned yet, but we're getting overwhelming response from all of y'all. So if you want to go on the 7 Seas with me and Kurt Schlichter and Derek Hunter and Storm Paglia and Matt Vespa and the whole team at Town Hall and all our sites, well, send an email to me. It's larryoc@townhall.com. I'll pass it on to the powers that be, and I'll make sure they know that you demand a cruise, a Town Hall cruise. Do that and become a VIP member today. Thank you. Well, we've got more news on the Russian collusion hoax front, and Kristen Welker just couldn't handle it. She can't handle the fact that her hero, Barack Obama, suddenly is starting to get a little muddied up, a little scuffed up in his reputation, because all roads lead to him at the very top of the pyramid of this horrific American scandal, worse than Watergate. And things are starting to get very serious in Washington, D.C. I want to show you what Kristen Welker did. She literally got shrill in her voice when she was interviewing a Republican senator. We'll show that to you in a minute. But first, Maria Bartiromo yesterday had some breaking news from CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Let's take a look at this. There's a lot to unpack here. I will be interrupting this a couple of times, just be forewarned. Take a look.
Look, our audience knows this, thanks to you and thanks to Devin Nunes. Our audience is well aware of what took place here, but we want to see accountability. Many of the statute of limitations have expired. It's been almost 10 years for many of these folks who did this. But John Brennan testified to Congress, and so did Hillary Clinton, within 5 years. I think it was in 2020, right, and then again in 2021. Are those statute of limitations still live? Tell me if, in fact, we could see a criminal prosecution here, as you just the other day, 3 weeks ago, have, in fact, referred criminal referrals to the DOJ.
Well, Maria, so part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But what hasn't come out yet, and what's going to come out, is the underlying intelligence that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims, by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what was what Hillary Clinton was up to. And you're right, Maria. John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. All of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is frankly completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects.
All right, that's CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Let me just, I want to summarize what you just heard. Mr. Durham was the special prosecutor. Robert Durham was the special prosecutor. He was a U.S. attorney. He had all powers of a U.S. attorney special counsel in interviewing all of the players in the Russian collusion hoax. That means Hillary, it means James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, all of them except Barack Obama. If they lied to a U.S. attorney working on behalf of the Department of Justice during any of those interviews, they can be prosecuted. And what CIA Director Ratcliffe just said is we're going to be declassifying a whole tranche of documents related to the Durham investigation that has been classified and kept from the American people. And as he just said, a lot of that testimony, what was the artful way he put it? Hang on, I want you to hear his words.
Before the Senate committee in September 2020, all of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is frankly completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects.
Yeah, their testimony is inconsistent with the intelligence. They lied. They lied. They perjured themselves, is what he's saying. Now, he's the head of the CIA. He's not in charge of law enforcement. He's not in charge of bringing charges. He's not in charge of that aspect of it. All he does is provide the evidence and intelligence, which is how it's supposed to work, which, by the way, is part of the problem with how things happened under Obama with regard to Russian collusion, where instead the president came up with a conclusion and then said to Brennan and Clapper and Comey, go find some intelligence that backs up this conclusion. Right? And understand, as this gets so clouded and convoluted, and if you haven't watched our other segments on this, please do so. But let me summarize it for you. They decided that Russia successfully interfered with the election in 2016, and they did it because they favored Donald Trump and they wanted him to win. And then Obama took that as the conclusion and said to Comey and Clapper and Brennan, go set up a report that has some intelligence in it that backs up the conclusion that I just told you I want you to get. And that's what they did. And that's a violation of the law. It's a weaponization of the intelligence community. Imagine the CIA and the FBI and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence scheming to tell lies publicly about you, about any innocent American. And then imagine that that innocent American just got elected president and he was assembling his government and he was about to take over. There's a law on the books. It's called conspiracy to deny an individual his civil rights. And that includes the civil right to carry out and execute the position that you've been elected to do in the government. They did that to Donald Trump. They impeded his ability to carry out his job as president by conspiring here. That's the law they broke, a major law. They keep calling it a conspiracy theory. No, it's a conspiracy fact. It was literally a conspiracy. All right, so that's what Ratcliffe is releasing here. We're going to be unclassifying these things, and the intelligence is at odds with the testimony, and all of that testimony that he just laid out was within a 5-year window, which means it is eligible for prosecution. Okay, more.
And so, you know, Pam Bondi does have a strike force. It is a different Department of Justice, a different FBI, and an opportunity to look at how these people really did conspire to run a hoax, a fraud on the American people and against Donald Trump's presidency. And so coming forward, we understand that they did this, but now we need to understand how they did this. And I think that's why you see the left losing their minds over this, Maria, saying, why are you spending time? This is vindictive. You're going back. This is Donald Trump, you know, seeking retribution. It's not. Donald Trump's election by the American people was a statement, Maria. They said to everyone, We know what you did to Donald Trump, and we reelected him because we know this was all fake. We know it was a hoax. Now we want to understand how you did it so that it can't happen again. And that's what this declassification process that we're undergoing right now, what's going on, why it's so important, and why there can be accountability and preventability to prevent these same people that did it in 2016 with the Steele dossier, with the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020, from doing it again in the future.
And let me just add to that, because the Steele dossier, Russian collusion hoax, and the Hunter Biden laptop. But there's one more thing in there that's really important, and that is the Mar-a-Lago raid. The Mar-a-Lago raid, I believe the investigation is focusing on that because Donald Trump had a huge tranche of executive paperwork and documents, and that included documents that played into and backed up much of what went on during the Russian collusion hoax and the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Donald Trump and people around Donald Trump. If they can prove or contend that the Mar-a-Lago raid was in part to acquire documents that were in Donald Trump's possession that related back to that, that expands the conspiracy to impede justice and to obstruct justice by keeping Trump from seeing that and keeping an investigation from having evidence. Not only does that extend the statute of limitations, but it also means that a grand jury can be impaneled in Florida, not in Washington, D.C., in Florida, to determine whether any criminal charges should be brought. Keep that in mind. Just keep that in the back of your head as this continues to play out. All right, a little bit more with Maria and John Ratcliffe.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make fair and just, bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
Director, one other question on this. Tulsi, as well as President Trump, used the word treason. Is there a statute of limitations on treason?
Well, Maria, what I would say is this, is there is no doubt in my mind that the people that we just talked about conspired. They conspired against President Trump. They conspired against the American people. And so I'll leave it to Pam Bondi and our Department of Justice, Kash Patel, and our FBI to investigate the conspiracy to do what and what charges that they're capable of bringing. But again, I don't think statute of limitations are going to impact, because in a conspiracy, Maria, the statute of limitation doesn't start to run until the last act in furtherance of that conspiracy. And Maria, part of why this is so important is the people behind this are still furthering the conspiracy. They're refusing to admit or acknowledge what they did in 2016 and what they did in 2020 was wrong. And so I think that's why this is so important, and why I'm excited about what the American people will see very shortly and what's to continue to come.
There you go. Conspiracy. As I just said, it's a conspiracy. And is a conspiracy to do what? We'll leave that up to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. My hunch, as I'm telling you now, write it down, is that it's a conspiracy to violate Donald Trump's civil rights. And real fast, because I looked this up earlier, I want to tell you what statute that is. In particular, it is, sorry, doing this in real time, and I should have been prepared for you. It is 42 U.S. Code 1985. 42 U.S. Code 1985. 42 U.S. Code 1985. Conspiracy to interfere with civil rights. What does that mean? Preventing an officer from performing duties. If two or more persons in any state or territory conspire to prevent by force, intimidation, or threat any person from accepting or holding any office, trust, or place of confidence under the United States, or from discharging any duties thereof, or to induce by like means any officer of the United States to leave any state, district, or place where his duties as an officer are required to be performed, or to injure him in his person or property on account of his lawful discharge of the duties of his office, or while engaged in the lawful discharge thereof. Sound familiar? Does it sound like they were trying to prevent by intimidation or threat Donald Trump from discharging the duties of his office? Sure does to me. Let's keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, that's what was happening on Fox News Sunday morning. Over on NBC News, it was a different story. Kristen Welker is absolutely hysterical and going after Lindsey Graham, of all people. Lindsey Graham saying, you know, we're learning a lot here about what happened on this Russian collusion thing, and it sure looks like the whole thing was trumped up. It sure looks like John Brennan and James Comey and James Clapper were told to come up with this intelligence community assessment, and they told us at the time that they weren't using the Steele dossier, but they did. And whatever scant evidence they had to back up their conclusion was complete and total crap. They were even told that the intelligence was crap by career professionals in the intelligence community. But Kristen Welker, nope. She's got to protect Obama at all costs. Watch this.
Senator, as you know, former President Obama has weighed in through a spokesperson. He says that's just patently false. I actually spoke to Susan Miller, who's a former senior CIA officer who helped oversee the 2017 intelligence assessment on Russian interference. She says it's completely false that Obama or anyone else asked them to change or sway their investigation. She says they all, she says, and she's a Republican, says they all would have quit if that had happened. Senator, are you trying to rewrite history to distract from the Epstein matter, Senator?
No. I love, so if you're like me, you're watching this, right? And Kristen Welker is just giving a speech. And you're thinking, where's the question here? Where's the question? She's giving a speech. Obama denies that. And there was a Republican in the intelligence community, and she has denied it as well. And Lindsey Graham's like, well, of course, what do you expect them to say? And so because they denied it, I guess that means that it must be true, which is an incredible position for a journalist to take. So I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, so where's the question? Is there a question here? And the question is, aren't you really just distracting from the Epstein story? Oh my God, they're precious, aren't they? I love that they've just discovered the Epstein story. And the only reason that any of this is being brought up now is to distract from the Epstein story. Okay, Kirsten, that's not even the high point of this interview. It comes right at the end of this exchange. I'll show it to you. Watch.
I'm trying to let you know and the media know that we found something we didn't know before. At the end of the day, I'm not calling for a prosecution against President Obama for treason, but I am calling for an investigation. Mr. Miller also said there was no credible evidence that President Trump colluded with the Russians. For years and months and days and weeks, people had their lives turned upside down, chasing the Mueller narrative that Trump was in bed with the Russians, that the Trump campaign was colluding with the Russians. The only people colluding with the Russians were the Hillary Clinton campaign and Christopher Steele manufacturing a document to get warrants against Carter Page based on lies and falsehoods. So, yeah, I'm very familiar with it. What you don't seem to acknowledge is there's something new being found. Rather than reinventing the wheel here, let's go back to a special counsel model to look at this something new. The something new is statements by President Obama. I don't like your analysis. Russia wasn't involved here in 2016.
Senator, you're saying there's something new. This report goes back to 2020. It's 5 years old. There's actually nothing new in this report and nothing that changes any conclusion. But I want to talk about Gaza.
Turned over is new to me.
Senator,
it's new to me.
But Senator,
you're trying to sweep this stuff under the rug, and that's not right.
That's exactly what she's doing. But I just want to repeat that one more time because it's just a quintessential Kristen Welker left-wing legacy media tactic here that is amazing. Watch. I'm going to interrupt now because I try not to if I can help it.
Something new is statements by President Obama. I don't like your analysis. Russia wasn't involved here in 2016.
Senator,
look at how she's dying to get in there. You heard her constantly trying to interject. Oh, she can't wait to get in. Oh, she can't stand that he's able to say this on her show. She's got to interrupt. Stop this. Stop saying things that I don't like. I don't want my viewers. My viewers are going to be mad at me because they love our peacock. It's NBC News after all.
You're saying there's something new. This report goes back to 2020.
Yes, but it's now just been declassified, you moron. Oh, but that's an old report. Yeah, but it was buried. We weren't allowed to see it, idiot. This isn't new. It's 5 years old. The news, oh my God, it's so amazing to me how many people who call themselves, journalists and reporters, people who literally work in the news, that's NBC News, right? It's news, NBC News, how they don't understand what news is. This is an old report. It's like if in the JFK files that just got declassified, they got a smoking gun document that says, well, would you look at that? Bozo the Clown was on the grassy knoll and he was the second shooter. The Kristen Welker would look at that and say, well, that's not news. That's 60 years old. You idiot. God. You're right. The report is from 2020, but it was buried and declassified and kept from the American people. And now we see it, and you better believe it's news. But then there's that, look at her face. But then she says, this isn't news. This is an old document. But this is my favorite part of this whole exchange, is that she gives the monologue because she's not in the news business. Understand something. When she approaches her job at Meet the Press, she didn't think to herself, okay, I'm going to do a segment with Lindsey Graham, and he's a newsmaker, and he's got opinions about this thing. So I'm going to challenge him and ask him some questions. I'm going to find out what he has to say, and then we're going to move on to my other segment. You see, that's what an interviewer does. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to follow up. I might challenge you on some of those things, but ultimately the whole point of the segment is to find out what this senator has to say about this issue. No. Kristen Welker wants to defeat him. She's trying to debate him. She's trying to win an argument against him. And I'll prove it to you. Because this whole statement that she's making, this isn't new. This is from 2020. This is old. It's not a question. She's saying all of this, and then she says, but let's move on to another topic. Wait, what are you talking about? So in other words, I want to make the final argument. I want to have the last word. I want to show you up. I want to win the debate. And then since I control the conversation because it's my show, we will now move on to the next topic. That proves to you that she's not interviewing this guy. She wants to win a debate with this guy. Watch.
Involved here in 2016.
Senator, you're saying there's something new. This report goes back to 2020. It's 5 years old. There's actually nothing new in this report and nothing that changes any conclusion. But I want to talk about Gaza.
You see? But I want to talk about Gaza. Senator, you say there's nothing new, but you said it's new, but it's all old. There's nothing new here. It doesn't change anything. So we're done with this conversation now. Let's talk about Gaza. That's not an interviewer. That's not someone trying to get information for the viewers. That's someone trying to win a debate, which is great. Change this from Meet the Press to Meet the Debaters. Maybe even Meet the Master Debaters. Meanwhile, back on Fox News, Devin Nunes, who is the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, he's the one with his chief counsel back then, Kash Patel, in 2017, started to unravel this whole lie of Russian collusion. He was the first person to figure out what a grand conspiracy this was. He had plenty to say as well.
The investigations in 17 and 18 and 19 and 20, he never said that, oh, yeah, I had told Obama and these people about the Clinton, the Steele dossier and all of that.
That Clinton was coming out with a new story that Trump colluded with Russia.
Right. That happened in August of 16. He had a lot to say, but one of the things he didn't have to say was that he knew that this was a Clinton hoax. It wasn't until John Ratcliffe becomes the head of the DNI, he digs that up, he finds these handwritten notes where Brennan himself, and I'm sure if he wrote it down, he must have remembered. It's kind of an important point to remember that if one of the presidential candidates is cooking up a scheme, working with Russia and working with Russians to cook up this scheme, and then what you found out now from the report that we put out this week is also that the Russians knew about the scheme. So the only people that didn't know about the scheme were President Trump and the Republicans. We're the only ones that didn't know about a lot of this, and now we're digging this up.
That's right. And let me just reiterate what was just said there. And this has been lost in the shuffle for some reason, because everyone's saying, John Brennan, he's the one who claimed that he didn't use the Steele dossier. And then it turns out he did use the Steele dossier, but, he thought it was. No, John Brennan knew of the Steele dossier and the fact that the Clinton campaign was trying to slime Donald Trump as being in bed with the Russians. He knew about this months before Election Day. He briefed Barack Obama about it. Obama and Brennan knew. that it was a Hillary Clinton campaign tactic, an opposition research tactic to deflect from the intense scrutiny of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server instead of the government email server when she was Secretary of State. She had to change the subject. So they came up with the Russian collusion hoax. They paid millions of dollars to Christopher Steele, a former MI6 agent, to create this thing that they knew from the beginning was fake. They knew that it was paid for by Hillary. And so then when Barack Obama said, go and support this claim that Trump was helped by the Russians, and it was because they supported his candidacy, they knew it was fake from the beginning. They manufactured this. And that gets lost in the equation. Understand this. Because he just pointed out, Hillary knew it was fake. Obviously, she paid for it. Obama knew that it was fake. John Brennan knew that it was fake. James Comey knew that it was fake. James Clapper knew that it was fake. They all knew that it was fake. And then a month after Trump won the election, they said, create this assessment that shows the Russians interfered successfully with the election and that they did it to help Donald Trump, even though they knew that was not true. And then they found intelligence that was fake and fraudulent, including the Steele dossier that they knew was fake, to support that. But understand something here, because that's important to know, because that's the crux of this conspiracy. That's the crux of it. But one last item here. The director of the CIA intercepted intelligence that showed that the Russians knew about this fake dossier, and that John Brennan obviously knew that Hillary Clinton had created this thing for opposition research. And as the director of the CIA, informing the president of the United States in the middle of a presidential election, at no time during any moment of the summer and early fall of 2016, leading up to Election Day, did anyone working for the Obama administration say, hey, we should maybe let the Trump campaign know about this? Right? We hear about it all the time. Oh, it was the Obama administration did everything by the book. They followed every rule. They didn't do anything that was improper or out of line. Everything was done. They were just following the evidence. And they may have gotten it wrong, but you can't blame them. There was no conspiracy to hurt Donald Trump. If that's so, then why didn't they pick up the phone and say, hey, you guys should know about this? Right? Because they're not the campaign. They're not the Democratic National Committee. They're the White House. They're the CIA. They're the FBI. They're the Justice Department. They're the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They knew that there were shenanigans going on. They knew the Russians knew that there were shenanigans going on. They knew that there was a fake thing being floated out that Hillary had paid for. And they never once, in their responsible role as members of the intelligence community, supposedly protecting our country from nefarious actors, they never once picked up the phone and notified the Trump campaign that they knew this was going on. Why not? You would think they would, but they didn't. Why not? You know the answer. We'll keep following this story. We'll follow it for you. And no one else is really doing it the way we're doing it. And we're okay with that, because hopefully it keeps you coming back for more. Thank you so much for watching the show today, guys. Appreciate it. That was a fun one coming off the weekend. We had lots of good stuff. Let's get to your super chats real fast here, if we could. God's best friend. I love that so much. 2 pounds. Ursula van der Leydown. Is that what you guys over there call your chairman of the EU? Oh, man. Thank God for Brexit. God's best friend with another 2 pounds. Oh, thank God for Brexit. Oh, my God. I can't believe you just said that. I just said it. We're still well, you're kind of still pretty, but you're better off than you were before. I promise. God's best friend. Tally ho. Gallet, that's a new name. And what is that currency? 15. Did we just get Bitcoins or something? What is that?
I have no idea. I've been thinking.
What's that currency? That might be worthless actually, but we'll take it. Just to say thank you for making sense. Thank you, Galit. Is it pronounced Galit? Gallet? Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Whatever that currency is. Francie. Hey, Francie. Kevin. Oh, well, this is for you, Kevin. Go ahead.
No, please. You're the host.
It's for you. It says Kevin. Far be it for me.
Kevin, I tried to send a super chat to tell everyone to buy Doge Squad. Not sure what that is.
That's my book, Kevin. I have a book called Doge Squad, The Corruption Protocol. It's a great little novella. It's a spy thriller. It's ripped from today's headlines. It's available on Amazon, hardcover and paperback, and Audible, narrated by the author.
I thought this one was for me to read.
No, I'm just filling in the blanks here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Francie. Much appreciated.
Super chat will not load. Larry's surprisingly talented, and the book is better than James Patterson's new book. Francie, that's so sweet of you, and thank you so much. And I like your new picture. Is that a new picture? I'm going to try not to get offended by the surprisingly talented part of that. I don't know why that's a surprise. You see me every day. I think it takes a lot of talent to do this. Thank you, Francie. God's best friend with another £5 super chat. Good Lord, we're touching. We're hitting every mark for God's best. Well, I guess this was pretty EU and European, Great Britain centric today. Every morning I wake up thinking I'm wrong, but by evening I realize that I'm bloody right again. Well said, sir. Well said. Ball State alum. Hey, Jeff, thanks. $10 super chat. I don't care if Hooters Spock's boy, that's Jake Tapper. I don't care if Hooters Spock's boy actually asked a real question instead of softballing it. Blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. Yes, that is correct. Broken clock is right twice a day. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut. Although I don't know if it was a real question. It was whenever a Democrat who runs these Sunday shows says, why are Democrats, why are you polling so bad? It's almost like this sense of desperation. It's like, you've got to fix this. Guys, why are you not doing well? You got to be better. It's like he's like, trying to help him out. But you're right. He did ask a good question. God's best friend with a £2 super chat. Obama's cook voted for Kamala. Wait, before he drowned or after? Thank you, God's best friend. That's funny. A psychological projectionist, a £2 super chat, is lying about a POTUS elect protecting democracy. Good question. Good question. And that seems to be exactly what happened here. That story continues to unfold, and I cannot wait to see more. Oh, I forgot to point out in that segment, another thing that John Ratcliffe said. He kept saying Maria Bartiromo asked him a question about the statute of limitations. And he said, well, that's why I've sent these referrals and why Tulsi Gabbard has sent these referrals. Referral means criminal referral. Okay, that got lost in the shuffle there. But the CIA director apparently has looked at the evidence, looked at the classified information, and determined that people broke the law. And so he sent, that's a criminal referral. You don't send just a, by the way, memo to the attorney general. You say, hey, I think that the law was broken here, but that's not my determination. I'm referring it to you. You come up with the final conclusion. So ball is in Pam Bondi's court. Again, we'll see how that pans out. Thank you guys for watching. Great show. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.